Hello, and welcome to me and Lewis's Pecha Kucha on Viola Spolin. Thank you.
Viola Mills Spolin was born on November 7, 1906, in Chicago, Illinois, to Russian parents. She came from a theater-inspired family through family games, gatherings, and trips that her father brought her to the opera house. She started creating games as early as childhood. Spolin was in several plays in her high school years and had friends with nicknames and dressed casually in men's clothing. She also played on her high school basketball team and then proceeded to study drama at DePaul University, where she would make up theater games and ideas for plays. She studied under the works of a famous sociologist, Neva Boyd, who became one of her greatest inspirations, saying that the only person I felt was the inspirator of my life was Neva Boyd, and she continues to be. This helped her to apply children's teaching in theatrical practices. Lynn married high school sweetheart William Silverberg, and they had two children, Paul and William, in 1927. The children changed their last names to Sills after the divorce between Spolin and William in the 1930s, but continued to work in various theater jobs. She worked as a stage manager in a theater at the World's Fair and took the knowledge she learned from Boyd to teach in recreational places like orphanages for kids. In 1935, leaving her children with her family, went to New York to study a famous group theater actors, where she returned to start the educational playroom with other divorced wives. Spolin went from living with other divorced parents to starting the Young Actors Company, where she would teach as well as write about the effects of theater on children. Soon after, went to direct plays like Juno, The Paycock, and helped with Caucasian Chalk Circle. During her time at Second City, she wrote one of her first books, Improvisations for Theater, published in 1963, a manual written for workshop instructors to use in instructing actors in improvised skill. The book was immediately found by theater leaders because of the similarities between the goals and format of an acting workshop and creative drama school. Spolin ran a large number of workshops and seminars at several colleges, schools, and other theaters where she would share her knowledge, while starring in famous movies such as Alice in Wonderland, Goldstein, and as well as her methods of teaching in other movies. In 1985, one of her books, Theater Games for Rehearsal, a Director's Handbook, was reviewed successfully. Spolin's son, Paul Sills, created a theater for his mother to extravagate the gaming methods his mother provided for him. The theater was named after her, called the Spolin Theater, and the games she used were experimented with in plays and other performances. The original actors from the theater are known as the Spolin Players. In her later years, she published a total of 7 books talking about her story and her methods of teaching in different aspects. One book called Theater Games for the Lone Actor in 1986, another called Theater Games for the Classroom, working with school children.
Viola Spolin focused her improvisations towards the act of doing instead of focusing on the acting part of it, which made them more realized as a present moment. As said in the first chapter of Improvisations for the Theater, everyone can act, everyone can improvise, anyone who wishes to can play in the theater and learn to become stage-worthy. Spolin's techniques are often called the theater game system due to their influence in shaping a lot of today's improv-based exercises. Some of the fundamental elements of it include intuition, spontaneity, and visualization. For every exercise, there includes a point of concentration. Spolin found many of her techniques from her work with children. Kids will most likely create spontaneous inventions if it means succeeding, and it allows for communication and storytelling to happen in a natural way. Her book, Theater Games for Classroom, addresses this in more detail. One popular game from Spolin is Gibberish, as in the name of the game is Gibberish. In this exercise, actors have to tell a narrative without saying any real words. It's through the uses of emotions and movement that one can really connect with other participants and the audience. Another exercise is Mirror, a game you've most likely played before. Two people stand face to face and both have to reflect each other's movements. One leads while the other follows, and after some point, it switches. It calls for complete focus on another person rather than paying attention to anything you're doing yourself. One last recognizable game is Who Started Emotion? In this game, everyone sits in a circle and one person is asked to leave the room. The teacher chooses one student to lead a series of body movements for everyone in the circle to follow. The person who just left is then asked to come back into the room with the goal of trying to figure out who among the circle is the leader. Spolin believed her techniques would help in democratizing the theater making process. She wanted to remove the barriers between the theater and student and between the performers and the audience. With that said, though, Spolin's methods weren't universally agreed with by other influential theater teachers. Lee Strasberg's methods required a long process of drawing from personal experiences, a departure from Spolin's impulsive actions. In contrast, Chekhov's and Meisner's methods reflect a lot of the same ideas as Spolin's. Spolin's techniques find themselves in a lot of theater courses today, but for a full study of her techniques, improv schools like Second City offer classes built from the ground up by them. It's also important to note that Spolin's son, Paul Silas, built a lot of his techniques from his mother, so schools where he played a big role are also to note. And as a final note, there have been some notable actors to have studied in Viola Spolin's technique. Some of them you might know. These include Ghostbusters, Dan Aykroyd, Bill Murray, and Harold Ramis, John Belushi, Chris Farley, Mike Myers, Bob Odenkirk, and Fred Willard.